Hello and welcome back to Clinic on Cue, the show where we pick the brains of everyone and anyone involved in clinical research. I'm your host, Shauna Cusack, Global Sales Manager with Atlantia, and today I'm joined by the esteemed Professor Ted Dinan. So Ted is an Emeritus Professor of Psychiatry and a Principal Investigator in APC Microbiome Ireland, as well as our very own Medical Director. So welcome to the clinic today, Ted. We are delighted to have you. So could you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
I went to medical school here in Cork, and quite shortly after leaving medical school, I went to America to work in physiology towards a PhD. I was working with quite a big name in physiology, still is, Gary Aston Jones. And then I came back to London, and I was in London for a few years as a lecturer and a junior doctor, qualified in psychiatry, before coming to my first faculty post, which was in Trinity College in Dublin. And I was planning to stay there. I was offered a post in London at St. Bartholomew's Hospital Medical School. So I went back to London again for a few years. And then I came back to Cork over 20 years ago to take up the chair of psychiatry. So that's really how I ended up back at my roots.
Came back home.
Bit like a homing pigeon, I suppose, back to one's roots. And so via New York and London, really.
Okay, and then how did you get into with the APC?
Well, when I came back to Cork, APC was about to start, and I was part of the application. There were a number of us who applied just to set up APC. And I suppose my skill set was that I was able to, let's say, look at behaviour in animals or look at behaviour in humans. And if one put bacteria into, let's say, a mouse or a rat or a human, one could look at behaviour. And of course, that was a skill set maybe they didn't have in microbiology. Right. So I was able to marry my skill set with the skill set they had, which was looking at microbes in enormous detail. So it kind of proved to be quite a fruitful relationship, really, and I've obviously built up a lot of contacts and friendships in the microbiology department at UCC as a result of that. And
when you first started, was it in the area of microbiology? Was it gut microbiome? Was it brain? Was it?
I think initially it was very much looking at the behaviour of animals and looking at the chemistry as well. If you put a microbe into an animal and their behaviour changed, what was the underlying neurochemical change? So that's really what we were looking at. We might be looking at the serotonergic system or whatever system, but it was trying to look at behaviour and the underlying change in neurochemistry. And that was a very novel idea, the idea that a microbe in your gut could change your behaviour was quite radical. And, at the very beginning, Fergus Shannon was the director. He's a gastroenterologist. And I think we were both of a similar mind that, this was a very new area of science and that we had to publish in the top journals. That, there's lots of rubbish journals out there, plenty of them. They're looking for papers all the time. But we really were of the view that if we were going to really make a contribution, we had to publish in the top journals. And I think we've been able to do that. I mean, if one looks at my publication record, over the years, it's been quite top journals.
Yeah, very high impact.
So that was
your goal from the start.
That was the goal from the beginning, really. It was, absolutely.
Okay. Well, that leads us nicely, I guess, into the next question, and it's what sparked your interest in research and then particularly into the microbiome? Right.
Well, look, my interest in the brain gut goes back quite a while. When I started in Trinity, I was in my early 30s, I was about 30, 31 at the time. A gastroenterologist there, Nat Keeling, who's a very, very good friend of mine, he's retired now, but he convinced me that the brain-gut axis was really worthy of investigation. And he was interested in irritable bowel syndrome, he still is. And so we began studies, but it's funny, this now is the late 80s, no one was interested in microbes at that stage. People spoke about the brain-gut axis, and he and I published quite a few papers. To be honest, I don't think many, I think they were largely ignored. They weren't in bad journals, but they were largely ignored. I mean, we had papers, in a variety of journals, and they were largely ignored. It was really, I suppose, only when in the last 15 to 18, maybe 20 years, that people have realised that microbes in the gut are very important in terms of the way the brain-gut axis functions.
When you started to see a big shift or a change?
Absolutely. So it was really, I suppose, when I came to UCC and over the last 15 to 18 years, we've seen that, microbes are fundamental. So while we were speaking previously of the brain-gut axis, it became clear that this was the brain-gut microbiota axis, and that this was the component that we were missing, when Nat Keeling and I were publishing papers back in the late 80s and early 90s.
And even from, a consumer perspective, you see it in the general public. People are becoming more aware of what microbiome is or what the word microbiome means, and talking about maybe gut-brain axis evens.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Ted, what is the most commonly asked question you get relating to your research, and particularly from a dietary supplement angle?
Well, I suppose many people are asked the question, what dietary supplements should I be taking? And there are lots of dietary supplements out there that are utterly useless. So the only advice I can really give that I think is sensible is follow the science. Now, look, you don't need to be a scientist, but you need to know that what the claim on the supplement is actually backed by data.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, unfortunately, the supplements industry is like the Wild West.
Yeah.
There are so many things out there which have no data behind them whatsoever. It's almost fabricated data.
It's overwhelming nearly when you walk into
exactly.
a shop. Yeah.
And you never have to worry about that with a drug, because the drug wouldn't be on the market if it didn't have some data behind it. But when you go into a health food store, there are supplements there that anyone would know actually are useless, a waste of money. You might as well be drinking water or taking Smarties. So I would really advise people to whether they're scientists or not, ask the question, is there data to support this claim? And if there's not, forget it. Don't go near it.
And from a consumer's point of view then, where do you think the best place for them to find this data is? Because a lot of them don't maybe know where to look up scientific data.
It's very difficult. But you know what? Google is very good at providing data. If you Google, is magnesium any good for you, or is a particular vitamin? Google will come up with a lot of stuff. You don't obviously, if you want to really look at the science, maybe you go to PubMed. But you know what? Google search is pretty accurate in a lot of things. And if there's no data there, Google will come up and say there isn't anything on this particular thing, and that's knowledge. That's good knowledge for the consumer to have.
I think that's great advice. Thank you. Okay, next question. So, what stands out to you as the biggest difference in clinical research now compared to when you started your career?
Well, I think the biggest difference, to be honest, is the fact that publishing now is much different to when I started out. With 3 authors, you could get a paper in Nature. You rarely see a paper in Nature with 3 authors now. So in order to get into top-class journals now, you need to be multidisciplinary. And, when I published the first paper, I think there were 3 of us as authors. We were all in the physiology domain. The paper went into Nature. Obviously, getting a paper in Nature is a big deal, at any stage of your career. But nowadays, most papers in Nature have 18, 20 authors, and there'll be people from 6 different backgrounds looking at the same problem from different angles. Is that a good thing? Maybe it is.
Not always necessary, maybe.
Not always necessary, maybe. And, one wonders, has it advanced science that much by taking this multidisciplinary approach? Probably overall, I think the answer is yes, because it enables you to look at problems at different levels of analysis. So I would see that as the major change, really.
And then leading into the next one, what are your predictions then for the future of clinical trials?
I think that when you look at clinical trials going forward, AI is going to play a very big role, as it is in so many aspects of our lives.
We've had this a lot on the show. So.
And I think what AI will enable us to do is reduce the number of negative studies.
Okay.
Now, I think that with AI, it is possible to predict which compounds or whatever are likely to produce a negative result. And I think that is going to be a major asset going forward, because it will reduce expense, it will reduce volunteers' time, because they won't be volunteering for things that are a waste of time. I think that's a big thing. I think the other thing in relation to clinical trials is regulation will increase. I hope it increases, because we cannot have a situation where the public go into a pharmacy or a health food store and are confronted with fabricated data. And that is what is happening at the moment. They are going in and they are seeing claims being made that are totally unsubstantiated.
This has come up on the show with another guest, Dr. Antiles, and she was saying it's just crazy to have products on shelf that have no
data.
Clinical data.
You know, so I really do think the regulation has got to increase and will increase. And that will change.
Right.
I think that's a plus.
Yeah, it will benefit everybody.
It will benefit everyone.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, we're into the rapid fire round.
Right, yeah.
So just relax now and shout the first thing that comes into your head.
Yeah.
Okay, so your favourite restaurant, Ted?
I think probably Goldie's. I like Goldie's a lot.
I haven't been there yet, but I've heard it's brilliant.
Really, really good.
For fish, especially.
I love fish. I don't eat meat at all, actually. I'm largely vegetarian, but I do eat fish. Goldie's is fantastic.
Your go-to relaxation spot?
Well, for me, since I've been a kid, since I can walk, I run. And I run a marathon most years, and I love running.
Are you doing any marathons this year?
I have 1 or 2 lined up. I'll certainly do Malaga because I usually do that in December. But, you know, I have a number of races. Cork to Cove, 15-miler. I'll obviously do that in the autumn. I'll do a few 10-milers.
Is that the secret to staying young?
Well, I don't know about that, but for me it is. I think, you know, are immature as my children rather than young, but I mean, whichever. I love running. Okay,
brilliant. The last book you read?
At the moment I'm reading Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. The previous book I read prior to that was The Existential Cafe, which I think is a fantastic read. But I'm always reading novels and whatever. I've always got a few books on the go.
So there's multiple books. Favourite holiday destination?
Well, we have a house which I bought about 30 years ago for half nothing in the mountains down in Andalusia, and I kind of relax when I go there. So it's a small place in the village, small little 2-up, 2-down house in the village, and I very chill out when I go there.
And can you get out running there?
Yeah, very much in the mountains. I love running in the mountains. It's great, you know.
I'll need some tips because I can't run at all. The last movie that you saw?
Wicked Little Letters, which came out there. It's an English movie. That Irish actress, that woman Buckley from Killarney, is in it.
Would you recommend?
I thought it was very funny. It's very light. It's very humorous. I must say I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And the last question now. So if you weren't working in clinical research and had to do something else, what would it be?
Right. Well, you know, when I look back in school, for all sorts of reasons, maybe it's my background and all sorts of things. And when I was in second year in school, I decided I was going to be a doctor. There were no doctors in my family, but I decided I was going to be a doctor. And I have no regrets whatsoever. If I didn't do medicine, I think classics, I mean, Roman literature or something like that, and become an academic in that area, I think I'd have enjoyed, you know.
Still think the academic route you would have went down?
I think I probably would have, you know. I mean, you know, I enjoy that, you know.
It's unusual as well from a very young age, knowing what you want to do. I think that's quite unusual. So do you know why it is you wanted to go to be a doctor?
I remember we had this guy. He was teaching us in Christians at the time. He was a guy called McCarthy. He had a nickname called Dickie Rashers. And he came in one day, and I remember distinctly thinking, this is really interesting. I think I'll be a doctor. And of course, it was the biology that interested me. And it's still biology, you know. So it was in second year in school, I thought, I'm going to be a doctor. I never thought about being anything else.
Wow, that's amazing.
You know,
great story.
That's what I did, you know.
Okay. Lovely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was
Cheers.
brilliant talking to you. Okay, so we've come to the end. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe below because we have plenty more content coming soon.